Lesson 7-2, Theoretical Probability. Theoretical probability is just the probability of an event when all outcomes are equally likely. An example might be flipping a coin. You have a 50% chance of landing on heads and a 50% chance of landing on tails. You could think of rolling a number cube, which we usually call rolling dice. And there's 6 sides on that number cube, so you have a 1 out of 6 chance of landing on the number 1, or you have a 1 out of 6 chance of rolling the number 5. So these are called theoretical probability. We can call an experiment fair if each possible outcome is equally likely. So if we flip a coin, it's fair if it could land on heads 50% of the time and tails 50% of the time. But it would not be fair if that coin was weighted where it would land on heads far more often than tails. So the probability of an event is equal to the possible outcomes out of the total number of equal outcomes. So if we said, for example, that it was the probability of flipping a coin and landing on heads, we might say P of heads is equal to 1 possible outcome out of 2 equal outcomes. Out of heads or tails would be the total number. Example 1, find the probability of rolling a number greater than 2 on a number cube. So remember, a number cube is like is dice. We would call it, when we have multiple ones, we call them dice, and one is actually called a die. But we also call them often number cubes in math. So we're finding the probability of rolling a number greater than 2. So I'm going to say the probability of greater than 2. I'm just describing the event and all the possible outcomes. If we think of dice, there's numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So greater than 2 would be 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there's a 4 out of 6 chance. And we could even think over here for a minute and think that would be 3, 4, 5, or 6. Those are the numbers that are greater than 2. So there's a 4 out of 6 chance. And we have actually found the probability. We're going to write it as a fraction, decimal, and percent. So simplified or reduced, this 4 out of 6 is 2/3. Or we could write it as a decimal, which would be 0.6 repeating. Or we could write it as a percent, and we'll go ahead and round it. It's about 67%. Or you could say 66.6 repeating. So we have found the probability of this event. Example 2, predict the number of times the spinner will land on 2 after 300 spins. So we can use probability to make a prediction by using a proportion. So we'll set up one ratio or fraction for probability and then one ratio or fraction for the prediction. So the probability of landing on a 2 would be that there's one number 2 out of 4 numbers it could land on. So there's a 1 out of 4 chance or probability of landing on the number 2. That's just if we spun it one time. And then the prediction would be after 300 spins. So out of a total of 300, how many times would it land on that number 2? So x times out of 300 would be equal to 1/4. And this is not the only way we could solve this. We could just simply find out what 1/4 of 300 is. But we're going to go ahead and solve this by using this proportion. 4 times x is 4x. 1 times 300 is 300. Now that we have 4x equal 300, we're going to divide both sides by 4 in order to solve for x, which is 75. So to answer the question, you would expect it to take 75 spins of landing on 2 out of 300.